Okay, cool. So we're recording, and what I've done is I've set up. Oh, sorry. Let me make this bigger. Is that big enough? So I've set up a folder for a project that we're going to do just to kind of demonstrate how we can establish some sort of a Git flow when we're collaborating with other people. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up my terminal down below. I like using my integrated terminal in VS Code. You don't have to do that. You can obviously be using a different terminal. That's fine. And the first thing that we want to do when we're creating a new project is we need to initialize Git. We need to tell Git, I'm trying to establish some changes inside this project, and I want to be able to track those things, right? Anybody know the command for that? Whoa, git init. Okay? And you guys can see what it's saying is that we've initialized an empty repository in this directory. Okay? Now, oh, that's not showing there. So if I want to see what this directory is, you can see it's .git, and it's not showing in my sidebar. You guys know why it's not showing up over there? Does anyone know? Because it's a dot folder. Yeah, that makes it hidden by default. So if I want to see it, I would have to do something like ls-la would do it. And oh, geez, you can't really see that. Hold on a second. You guys can see that there is this .git directory in there. Okay, so that's where it's going to be storing the information for our repository. All right, so that's cool. So let's say I wanted to create some files in here. Let's say I wanted to create an HTML file, for instance. Go over here, let's just create it, index.html. Drop some stuff in there, and then I'll just put h1 hello git. Exciting. All right, so you'll see that now my file over here is showing up in green. Does anybody know why that is?
It's tracking the changes.
Is it?
And you're adding it in the Git.
So here's how we can check and see what the current status of our Git project is. If I go down to the terminal here and I say Git Status, it'll tell me here that I've got untracked files. Okay? This is the file that's untracked, my index.html. So it's telling me that even if I were to commit my changes at this point in my repository, it's not yet tracking this file, this index.html. So how can I change that? Because I do want this index.html to be part of my project. Right? So what we can do is we can stage this file for commit. Okay? And what Juan is saying is we have this command we can use, which is git add. So I'll say git add, and then if I put a dot in here, what that's saying is that I want to add everything in this current directory and then in all the directories below it as well. So if I have any subdirectories in my project as well, they'll all be tracked at this point as well. All right? Okay. So now, if I want to see what my status is again, it should look a little bit different. So let me clear that out, and I'll say Git Status. And you can see here, now it's telling us we have changes to be committed. And you can see there's a new file, index.html. That's indeed the file that we created. So perfect, right? Now, what if I'm going along and I decide, all right, this index.html is in pretty good shape, and I actually want this to be a checkpoint in my code. So I want this to be a commit, something that I can come back to and say, well, I have my code working at this point, or I made some changes that I was happy with. How do I go about doing that?
Git commit -m.
Git commit.
Give the name of the commit you want. Okay. So if it's the first one,
Okay.
-m.
-m. And then, yeah, as Juan said, traditionally, if it's the very first commit in the project, we could give it a message just saying initial commit. All right. So I'll say initial commit Okay, one file changed. So now, if I were to run Git Status, let's see what that tells me. So now it's just telling us nothing to commit, working tree clean, right? Because we haven't done anything since our most recent commit. So that's cool. All right. What if I want to see my commit history? So I want to see what's happened in this repository. Somebody want to grab that door? Thanks. So I've got this command that I can run git log, and it will actually show me what the recent history is. So it's telling me here that I've got this commit right here. It's kind of a long hash, and that's how they're identified. It's telling me who did it with the email address, and then the actual date time that the commit happened, right? And then also the message down there, what we saw. All right. So that's cool. So now that we've got some stuff going on our local computer, we may actually want to collaborate with somebody else. So let's say we're doing a project for Project Week, and I'm thinking, hey, I want to collaborate with Tanner. All right. What we're going to use is one of these collaboration hubs like we were talking about, like either GitHub or Bitbucket. In this case, we're going to stick with GitHub. And I'm going to establish him as a collaborator. All right. So let's kind of get into that process. What we need to do is we have to actually first set up our repository on GitHub so that we can put it up there. All right. So let's go to GitHub. Make this a little bit bigger. Oops. Okay, so if I want to create a new repository, whoops, I could just do it right in here. Get out of that. So if you're on sort of a mobile view, you can create a new repository over here with the new button. So we'll just call this Git Demo. Uh-oh, I think I already created this. Git Demo 2. All right. And then you guys can optionally provide a description if you want, not super important. You can establish whether this is public or private. So private is gonna make it not visible to the general public, all right? So if you guys are uploading your code for an exam or something like that, make it private, please. Sometimes people don't do that. All right, and then you can also initialize the repository with a README if you want. We're not going to do that in this case. We can also create a README file in our local version of the repository, but we're not going to do that quite yet. Probably won't do it at all. All right, so create the repository, click the button, and then there we go. So now I've got this Git Demo 2 here. And as I said, I want to collaborate with Tanner on this project. So what I need to do is I need to add him as a collaborator. Right? So if we go over here to settings for the repository, once I click on that, I should be able to click on collaborators over on the left-hand side there. Oh, now I got to enter my password. Okay, so here I can just do a search by username, full name, or email address. I think you were TDS, is that right? Yeah. TDS programming. Where did that go? Okay, cool. Add collaborator. Okay. So what it's going to do is it's actually just going to send him an email and say, hey, somebody's asking you to collaborate on a project. He needs to go check that email and essentially say, yes, I do want to collaborate. All right. All right. So let me refresh this page and see if he's accepted my invitation. No, he hasn't.
There you go.
Hurry up, man. No, I'm kidding. All right. Refresh. There he is. He's listed as a collaborator, so we're good to go. All right. This means he will actually have access to push changes up to the remote repository. All right. So one thing I want to stress here early on, before we even get into kind of the nitty-gritty here, is that there are now two different versions of this repository. What are they?
The different versions. The branch, master branch, and the sub branch. Is that what you call
Okay,
it?
I haven't created any sub-branches yet.
Okay.
But I do have a remote version of this repository, and I also have a local version. Now, they happen to be in sync right now. They're exactly the same. But I want to stress that we actually do have two different versions right now, right? Potentially. Yes?
If Tanner started working on his, there would technically be 3 versions?
No, I mean, really, well, yeah, actually there would be, because he's going to have his own version on his computer. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's a good point. Yeah. All right, so now that I've got Tanner on board as a collaborator and we want to do some work together, what I want to do is make sure that we do not step on each other's toes, okay? Because this is one thing that can get kind of tricky with Git, is that if I'm making some changes to a file and then Tanner ends up making some changes to the exact same file, we can end up with something called a conflict, okay? Where we're trying to alter the same thing, and then Git says, hey, I don't know which code is the correct code because you're giving me 2 different versions of something, and I don't know. So the idea is that you guys want to be in communication as much as possible and let each other know, hey, I'm working on this file over here, or I'm working on this file over here, so that that toe stepping doesn't happen, right? Okay. So what I'm going to do to ensure that on my end is I'm actually going to check out or go to a different branch. Now currently I don't have any other branches, all I have is this master branch. So I'm just going to create another one on which I can do my work. So back to the terminal, I'll clear this out. And in order for me to change to a different branch, I'm going to run this command. Huh?
Did you add the origin yet?
No, I have not yet.
Okay.
I should probably do that. All right, so here's the thing. We haven't yet established that there's really a connection between these two repos, right? The remote repository and the local repository. So what I need to do is I need to take all my code that I have on my local machine and actually push that up to the remote repository. So if we go back to Git, it's going to tell us the commands that we need to run to do that. So you can see here, shoot, I'm going to switch mine to SSH. So it's telling us here we can run these 2 commands if we want to push up an existing local repository to this GitHub version. All right. So this one is essentially adding this as a remote. Okay. It's telling Git, I want my remote to be over here on GitHub. And then this is actually going to push up all of our code to that. So let's just run those 2 together. Boom. Okay, so now we're done. It's telling us branch master set up to track remote branch master from origin. Okay, so it's saying that we have a branch called master on the remote, and we also have one on our local machine. Okay, so those 2 things are in sync right now. And then if I go back to GitHub and refresh the page, lo and behold, we actually have our code on here right now. So now we just have this little index.html, right? Good. So let's get back into what we were talking about. If I want to make some changes locally, and again, not kind of step on Tanner's toes, because I know he's going to want to work on something else, I'm going to create my own branch. And I'm also going to move to it all in one step. So I'm going to say git checkout. So checkout allows us to move to a different branch. And I'm going to add this argument -b, which means that I want to create the branch at the same time that I'm moving to it. Okay? So that's like if we were starting here from the master branch, I'm checking out this branch and I'm creating it all in one shot. Okay? One move. And I'll call this branch my name. Okay? And you can see it's saying switch to new branch Morley, so that's all good. All right. Now, over in Tanner's version, he's going to what's called clone this whole repository. Okay. So if I'm Tanner and I want to get this project, after he's been added as a collaborator, he's going to, oh geez, what did I just do? You can click on this and it will actually give you the address to run. So I can copy this right here, and then in my terminal on Tanner's machine, I can say git clone and then just paste in this address right here. And it will clone all that code that's on the remote repository right into his computer. All right, so he'll now have it on his local machine.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
So when you create the repository, you select SSH instead of HTTP.
Mm-hmm.
Does it really matter when we do it, or it has some difference?
No, you can do it with HTTPS. It's just then it's connected to your password. I have SSH keys on my machine, so
Okay.
it's different, but it's works this very similar.
Oh, okay, I see. So that's why when you push it, it doesn't ask you your GitHub username and password.
Exactly, yeah, because I don't want to mess with that stuff. I mean, remembering passwords is it's the worst. Absolutely the worst. I don't know about you guys, but I use a password manager called LastPass, and it's changed my life. All right, so now we've got the code up there, so that's all good. Tanner has probably cloned the repository. And now let's say he wants to make some changes to some stuff. So, do I want him making changes to the master branch? No, right? I want him actually moving to a different branch and making his changes there. So he's going to change to his Tanner branch, presumably. Okay. Now, I'm probably going to want to make some changes as well, and I've already changed over to my branch. Oh, let me just clear out here. So let's say I want to add some code in here. Whatever. I made some changes. Okay. And you can see that our file, again, is showing up. Well, it was showing up a second ago. Hold on one second. Sometimes VS Code's a little bit flaky with showing things over here, but
I think the one on the left showing the 150, is that the one showing the changes?
Oh, I think I know. So, yeah, I'm in a directory that actually is a Git project, so that's kind of sucky. Let me see something real quick. All right, so we won't worry about what it's looking like over on the left-hand side. Sorry about that. But when I run Git Status, you guys can see that now I've modified this index.html, right? So we're kind of right back to where we were before, which is I've made some changes. They haven't yet been committed, so that's fine. But let's say that I'm talking to Tanner, and we're talking about this collaboration. He wants to work on a CSS file, maybe? Right? Yeah. All right, cool. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to commit these changes that I've made here because I'm pretty happy with what I did to index.html. I made it very exciting. All right, so let's do git add one more time, dot. Okay. And what that's doing again is it's staging our changes to be committed. So it's saying potentially the next time that we commit, this file will be in there in the exact same way that we have it right now. All right. So I'm happy with it. I'm going to commit here. I'm going to drop a little message in there. It's just saying added a paragraph element to the body. All right. All right, cool. Now, what branch am I on again? I'm on my own branch. Yeah, exactly. So Tanner's on his own branch. We're all good because we're not touching each other's files. I'm on index.html. He's probably on, is it style.css? Is that what you did?
Styles.
Styles. Okay, all right, fair enough.
I can change it.
No, that's fine. No big deal at all. All right. So now we're going to get into how can we collaborate. I mean, we're already doing the collaboration, but now how can we fuse together these disparate versions of the repository right now? So I've got this version that just has index.html. He's got a version that has index.html and styles.css. But does his index.html look like mine? No, slightly different, right? I now have this extra line of code right here. I made some changes. All right, cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a decision. Who's going to go first? All right, you want to go first?
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good. Okay, so what he's going to do at this point, because we're just starting out, is he's going to push up the changes that he made to his local branch to GitHub itself. All right? And then once we've done that, you guys are going to see that now, how many branches will we have on our remote repository? 2.
Yeah.
So on the remote, we're going to have master, and then we'll also have Tanner. So let's check that out. So I'll refresh, whoops, go back to the main. Let's refresh this real quick. Why does GitHub Actions keep going crazy on me? Beat it. Oh, there we go. Dismiss. Okay, cool. So if I click on the branch here, we'll see we've got a couple branches, right? We've got master and we've got Tanner, so that's nice. Now, how can I get Tanner's changes into the master branch? Yeah, so we can create what's called a pull request. And I'm going to ask Tanner to do that since he's the one who has made these updates. He's then going to say, I want these updates to be incorporated into the master branch. And then next time I'll be doing the same thing because I'm going to put my changes up there and I'm going to say, could you incorporate my changes into the master branch? And I'll probably have Tanner look it over since you don't want to be the one approving your own pull requests, right? Some bias there. It's kind of, yeah, my changes are good. I know they're right. So it's good to have a second set of eyes on things just in case you mess something up. All right. You created the pull request. Okay, cool. So you can see that we've got this tab up here called pull requests, and I'll click on that. Okay, and then we get down in here, and here's Tanner's pull request, added styles. So I can click on this pull request. Super awesome styles. I want to see what they are. All right, cool. And then if I click on this added styles here, I should be able to see exactly what he did, right? So this is his commit. You can see there's the little hash for it, the 040. And then I'll come in here and you can see the code that he added. So he created some styles here, background color red, nice. The text is blue, red and blue. Looking good. All right, so I've checked this change out and I think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to merge this pull request. All right. It's telling us here that it has no conflicts with the master branch. So now we're going to merge it in and the master branch will actually have his changes in it. All right. So let's do that. Squash and merge. All right. Ooh. Okay, and then you can confirm the merge. There we go. So now if we go back to the master branch here, we're on the master branch, and notice how our master branch now has styles.css. So that's awesome, right? Okay. Now the question is, so I've made some changes and I've already committed on my local machine. How can I incorporate Tanner's changes? Because I don't want to then just push up my changes without actually having his code that he's already added, right? I want these things to be fused together. All right. So right now I'm still on my own branch. I've still made my commits. So again, if I go Git Log, I've got 2 commits now. The first one was just the initial commit. The second one was when I added the paragraph tag. If I want to get what the current version of the master branch looks like, I actually have to go back to the master branch. Right now I'm on my feature branch. So let me quit out of there, clear that, and I'll say git checkout master. Oops. Okay, so I switched to my master branch. Now how can I get the current version of the master? Does anybody know?
Git clone.
Clone? I don't want to do that, right? I already have the repository. Clone is only if you don't yet have it and you want to bring it down from the remote.
So some sort of operation that can download the file.
Yeah, so we had push already. What do you guys think the opposite of that's going to be? Pull. Now we're going to do a git pull, which will pull down whatever is on the remote master. So git pull. Okay? And you can see that now that I've pulled, I've got this extra file that I didn't have before, right? I've got styles.css. So that's cool. Nice. Now the question is, how can we get my changes, the ones that I already committed on my other branch, back up to the remote repository? Because now the next time, Tanner's got something he needs to commit, he wants to have my code as well. We want to be kind of on the same track. All right. So what I want to do is I actually want to go back to my feature branch, the one that I was already working on and made some commits to. So I'm going to go git checkout my name back to that branch. Now that we're here, what I can do is I can take the commits the commit that I've made, and I can what's called rebase it on top of whatever the current version of the master is. So it's sort of like taking whatever I had. If the master branch has been going through its own So we merged something that Tanner did back into the master, right? So now the master has another commit to it. So what I can do is I can take whatever I'm working on and I can shift it so that it's based on whatever the last commit on the master is. Right now it's based on this, but I want to shift it down so that it's stemming off of this. Okay? That's what rebase is going to do for us. So I'm going to say git rebase master. Okay? And now what we've got is we've got the version of our repository where I've got my changes, the stuff that I did to index.html, and I'm already seeing styles.css, right? So I've got both his changes and my own. How do I get all of this back up to the remote repository? We need to push to the remote repository. Okay? So I'm going to say git push. And lo and behold, it's telling me here, the remote version of the repository doesn't have a branch called Morley right now. The only 2 branches it has are master and Tanner. I wanted to have my own branch too, though, so that I could push to that branch. It'll tell you exactly what you need to run. Okay? So you just need to copy and paste this guy into your terminal. All right. Copy that in there. Cool. So now we should have this branch on our remote repository, and if I go back to it, I'll just refresh. You can see when I click the drop down here, we've got 3 branches: master, mine, and Tanner's. All right, cool. So how do I make it so that the master has my changes again? You guys remember?
Pull request.
Pull request, right? So this is like, I'm going to ask Tanner to take a look at my code and say, yeah, that's okay, I'll accept it, and then we'll bring it into the master. Okay? So if I go to pull requests here, I can create a new pull request. And what I want to compare is going to be master against my own, right? Okay? And it's saying here that they're able to be merged. So they can be automatically merged once we accept the pull request. So I'm going to create it. Okay? And then okay, I can actually assign this to somebody over here. Okay? If I want to assign Tanner to look at this guy, I can just add him here. And then I'm going to say here, whatever, added my awesome, p tag. Okay, let's create that pull request. Okay, there we go. And saying this branch has no conflicts with the base branch. So now Tanner is going to want to go into his GitHub there and take a look at this and see, does my code meet with his standards? Did I do well, Tanner? did my p tag meet your requirements? Yeah, your awesomeness. Oh, did you? Wow, look at that. Did you guys see that? It just refreshed the page in front of my eyes. I didn't even. We got sockets going on here. All right, cool. So he has actually merged this into the master branch, right? And then if we go back to the main Git demo here, you can see we've got everything. We're on the master branch, and if I click on that index.html, there's that p tag, right? It is there. Okay. So the next time he needs to make some commits on his local branch, what's he going to have to do? Does anybody remember? Pull what? Is he gonna pull from his Tanner branch?
Pull from the master.
He's gonna pull from the master, okay, and then he's gonna do what? So this is after he's already made one or more commits on his local branch. He goes back to the master and he pulls from it.
And then goes to his branch.
Then he goes to his feature branch, the one that he was working on, and then what command is he gonna run? Not yet. He wants to make his work stem off of the changes in the master.
Git add.
No. He's already added, right? So he's already committed on his local feature branch. So what's he going to do at that point? He went back to the master branch. He pulled the most recent code from the master branch. Now he went back to his feature branch again. So we went from here to here. Now we're back on the feature branch. All right. Now what? Rebase. There it is. All of a sudden it's like, the light bulb went on.
You say 4 or 5 answers,
Yeah. Something's got to hit. Yeah, so when we rebase, that means that we're going to shift whatever new work he just did and base it off of the current state of the master. Okay? Too much work? Yeah, you want to do it that way? I mean, you're welcome to. But imagine how complex things get as the code base starts to grow. I mean, certainly for something like this seems overkill, and I understand what you're saying. But once you've got a lot of files and a lot of folders, pretty easy to mess things up, right? Yeah. So that's basically how the flow goes, is that you're going to be working on your local branch. You'll commit your changes. You'll go back to the master branch, pull down whatever the current version of the master is, go back to your feature branch, and then you'll rebase whatever you did based on the master. Then you got to push it to the remote. Then what happens on the remote? Pull request.
Yeah, that's a cycle.
It's a cycle. Yeah. So everyone's going through that same process. And all the while they're communicating with each other so that there's not this, hey, you were working on the index to HTML, and I was working on the same file, and we ran into some kind of a conflict. Git doesn't like that so much. It's then going to ask you, which version of the code do you want to keep? And you may have to make some adjustments to it. Okay? All right. Any questions about the flow? No?
Can you repeat the flow one more time? Like,
Yeah?
from like just the original master.
Okay. Okay, so in the very beginning, we created this initial commit, right? It's the first spot. And then what I did is I created another branch on which I could do my work. So I had already sort of pushed all of my, just my initial commit up to this remote repository. Then I moved over to this branch and I did some other work. I made some changes there, okay? Tanner did the exact same thing. So if he's got his branch over here, he made a commit over on this side, right? All right, and then at the point at which we were happy with what he was doing, he pushed his changes to the remote repository, and then we merged those changes into the master branch. Okay? So once he had those changes on the master branch, what I needed to do after I've made my commit is now rebase my stuff on this current version of the master branch. Okay? So if my commit cycle looked like that, instead of being off of there, it's now coming off of here, right? Do you see how we just shifted it? So initially it was coming off this first initial commit. Now it's off of this commit that Tanner created. But again, did he make this commit directly on master? Was he coding on the master branch? Never. He was coding on this branch, on his own branch. And then we merged his changes into the master branch. Okay? So once I've done this rebasing process here, then I'm saying, I want the remote version of the repository to have this code right here. And that's when I did my git push. Once it's up on the remote repository, what do we have to do, Warren?
Pull request.
We have to do a pull request so that we can bring in these changes that I have here back to this master, right? So now we've got this kind of thing happening, which means that the master, it now has the code that I was working on, right? Anything else you want to hear about that particular flow? See, now you're just messing with me. It's like, say it 5 more times, please. All right.
After that, if Tanner wants to use your changes, you rebase again.
So he's going to read, yeah, so like if he's, let's say he makes some more commits, right? And then he wants these new commits to be based on the new master. He's going to rebase, right? So rather than his changes coming off of here, where are they going to come off of now? The master itself, right? He now rebased his changes off of that. Sorry if that looks a little confusing, because these diagrams, if you see them, are going to make you scratch your head probably. What the heck's going on here? All right, let's have some thumbs on this. Ooh. Yep. Hey, Regina liked it. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. How'd you guys feel? You guys felt pretty good. A little sideways over here. All right, not too bad. Not too bad. All right. Well, it's your first time seeing it, you know. As you practice with it and you get the flow down, it'll make a little bit more sense. And then the process of working with each other, which hopefully when you guys get to the Python stack, you guys do collaborate on projects. You'll get a lot out of it if you're not just working on your own. You can still use Git though if you're working on your own, right? So you could have your own master branch, and then let's say I want to work on something and just make sure that it doesn't break some feature that I know is already working. I can create a branch and go play around with it and see where that takes me. And if things go awry or whatever, it's very easy for me to check out and go back to the branch that I know is in fact still working. Okay. One other thing I'm going to show you guys before we finish is this thing called a Git Ignore File. And all this allows us to do is it just allows us to specify certain things that we don't want Git to be tracking at all. So if I go up in here and I create this Git Ignore file, it's .git ignore. Whoops. I can say something like, when you guys get to the mean stack, you're generally going to be ignoring a folder called node modules. Okay? So I can say I want to ignore node modules, save that file, and then if I create the node modules folder and go down here, so I'll go Git Status just to see where everything's at. Note that it's only telling me that I created this .git ignore file, right? It's not saying anything about the node modules because I've now told it ignore this folder entirely. Don't track anything that goes in there. And the reason why we sometimes want to do that, especially with the node modules, is because that folder becomes really, really large. It's going to have tons and tons of megabytes of code in there that you don't want to be storing on your repository. Okay? Because it's much easier for a person who's collaborating with you to just install all the things that are inside the node modules folder than to have those as part of the repository itself. Okay? This way we can keep our repository kind of slim in terms of the actual space that it's holding. All right? Also, if you guys are using Macs, you might have noticed there are these files that show up, these hidden files that show up, the DS store files. You guys seen those at all? No? Okay. It might be a good thing to add to your Git Ignore. If you're on a Mac or if you're collaborating with someone else who is on a Mac, because these will generally have absolutely nothing to do with your project. So it's not something that you want to be tracked by Git.
Question.
Okay.
How
Yes.
about the .vs code file or the folder?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of up to you how you want to manage the project like that. So the .vs code folder may have some settings in it that are specific to you
Like
as a developer that maybe another person would want to have different settings in there.
so for example, like a user snippet, things like that.
Snippets are going to be actually, those won't be in the repo at all. Snippets are just going to be in your installation of VS Code. No, but it might be like the settings, how you want different things to be handled for this specific project. So it depends. If you want everyone to be kind of dealing with VS Code in the same way with the project, you can include that .vs code folder.
Just the thing is that when I create a project, I don't have that folder. I didn't create it. It just come out from nowhere. So like a hidden folder. So, but when I do the Git, Git, the folder shows up, and yeah, not sure what it does.
Yeah, and then you can add it to the Git Ignore later on if you don't want everyone else who clones that repository to have that same folder in there, right? Yeah, so it's up to you. All right, cool. Class dismissed. You got it.